Richard Linklater is an expert at telling stories about love, whether it is to someone else or to his childhood. This time he combines that with the animated realm. A man narrates stories of his life as a 10-year-old boy in 1969 Houston, Texas, weaving tales of nostalgia with a fantastical account of a journey to the moon. But before I properly start with my review for Apollo 10.5, I want you to start the conversation about it in the comments below, whether you've seen it, whether you're excited for it, what is your favorite Richard Linklater film, anything and everything down there. And if you like movies and TV, this is the place to be, so consider clicking that subscribe button so you don't miss any future conversation on your favorite movies and TV. And like most movies, I love going into blind. I did that with this film as I only knew it was animated, clearly judging from that poster, and that it was a Richard Linklater film. And one of the things that immediately jumped off to me was the narration. I think narration is such a tricky thing to make work in a film that we just take it either for granted that it is a tool of storytelling, or it is something that never quite works these days. But I think this film has the right touch of narration, as it just captures the simplicity in this slice of life kind of story. And the narration is done by Jack Black, who does such a great job playing the adult version of this lead character, who is just recounting his childhood growing up in suburban Houston with his 5 siblings, a middle-class mother and dad. Just honestly go from quotidian day to quotidian day, and there's a really simple charm to that. There's something really comforting about this kid, his growing up, the small little day-to-day adventures that he lived, either in school or going to the movies or playing in his backyard. There's just something really beautiful, and it never feels like the film is trying too hard at creating this spectacle, but admiring the mundane and seeing the mundane as something spectacular in itself. It also goes through the history of America, what he experienced growing up as Vietnam was going on, as Kennedy was president and eventually assassinated, and it spans all these years from his formative years that shaped who he became and how he saw the world, from his passion about baseball to playing it with his brothers, to his passion about movies, and to the deep impact that the space program constantly playing on TV not only made on him, but also how it united his family. And that's really nice. There's a constant wholesome vibe to this entire film, just seeing his experiences. And as the space program starts to intensify, you start to see how that fuels his imagination, as the film has this constant sense of whimsy that never feels too much, and it always feels earned, as this kid starts to see these broadcasts about all the details of the space program, and you just see his imagination take off. And the film is able to create this very whimsical balance between recounting that special moment in history of building up to that day, July 16th, 1969, while also showing it through the perspective of a kid's fantasy about being plucked from his average life in suburbia to secretly train to this covert mission to go to space. And there's just something really interesting in seeing a child's perspective that was so influenced by the constant broadcasting of these major events, and contrasting his perspective to the adults in his life's perspective. The film, however, has a few drawbacks. This whole parallel of the child starting to imagine what if he went on the space program, what if there was the secret mission and whatnot, that takes a little bit to get going. The film introduces it right away, but then it sticks to the whole slice of life kind of structure, just showing what his days were like day to day, spending summers, working with his family, going to school, preparing, all that. When it came to its structure and the spanning of so many years, it reminded me of Boyhood a lot, a film I'm not quite the biggest fan of, where it just feels so surface level and it's not really diving deep into anything. It's literally a man, as fictional as he is, recounting what happened in his childhood day to day. It doesn't feel like it dives deep into any part of his childhood, into any of the characters in any particular sense. It's just nice, it's amusing, it feels like a novelty, but as quickly as it comes on screen, it quickly leaves your mind once those certain scenes are over. For the longest time, you're waiting for the film to go somewhere because it feels rather documentary-like, where you just have this narration by Jack Black and you just see what this kid does. So there's not really anything happening properly. There's just this guy off screen telling you what he did as a kid, whether he was going to school, spending evenings with his family, playing around in the park, anything. And with that, it started to click with me that there weren't really stakes in this. There isn't really a proper narrative on this, and that's why I think Linklater went with the rotoscope style of animation to make it stand out a little bit, because it feels rather like a documentary, even though this is a fictional character. And so the film takes quite a while to get going, or at least at finding the spark of its magic, and that is for the whimsical to come out and show this kid's imagination flourish. And so to me, the lack of stakes is what kept me aback. It's what stopped me from emotionally connecting with anything in this story, because as it spans all these years, as it recounts all these events, it never feels like anything is at stake. It's not building to anything, and it feels rather surface level. There is a familiarity in his life. This is just a regular kid from suburbia, middle-class family, and so it's not like we can't relate to him, but because there isn't a proper narrative building up to something, putting these arcs and whatnot in contention with one another and building to this crescendo, there just wasn't a lot for me to find compelling in this. It's not a movie that I can sit here and say this and this and this is what's wrong with Apollo 1.5. It's not one of those films. It's simply that it didn't quite connect with me on an emotional level. I can't help but admire the heartfelt love letter to childhood that Linklater so beautifully paints with his slice of life kind of structure. But sadly, I also can't overlook the lack of proper narrative or any sense of stakes whatsoever. That's what mostly kept me aback on this one. It's a movie that is not bad by any means, but it's more so one that I more admire than I actually like, or that it emotionally connects. And so Apollo 10.5 gets a C+. But hey, those are only my thoughts on Apollo 10.5. I want you to start the conversation about it in the comments below. What did you think of it? Did you love it? Did you dislike it? Anything and everything down there. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you to my channel members Bruna and Stuart for making this video possible. And there's another Netflix movie right now streaming there called The Bubble. I also reviewed that one right here, and I have many reviews right now up on the channel, including Morbius, Moon Knight, a spoiler-free and spoiler-free review, and also a Morbius post-credit scenes explained. I hope to see you in that one and in any other video I have coming soon. And so until the next one, love each other and love the movies.